Okay. So good morning, everybody. Glad you can make it this morning. Have lots of things to talk about today, particularly the EBB and where we are. A lot of good work that's being done already with our folks here. I want to bring you all up to date, and then we have some logistical issues to talk about regarding that program. So again, I want to remind you that if you have not filled out our Google form, please do so. The list of participants who have filled out that form, and there's about 75 people now on that list. So you can see who's committed and participating at this point in time. I know there's others who are on our list who we haven't seen in a long time, don't know if they're not interested, but anyway, it's important that we know and we have all your contact information. So if you haven't done that, please do so. Let's see. So we're going to talk about the EBB later today, so I don't want to get into that. Just FYI, we do have a page where I've been keeping all of the meeting summaries and now the recordings so that you can access those if you need to do that, including the last week's meeting. So I'm going to try to post the meetings every week. Excuse me. So again, we're going to get to the EBB a little later. So I'm not going to get into that now. Let's, so again, as always, I want to thank our sponsors, Care First Arizona, Mauricio, I don't know if you're online yet, the Valley of the Sun United Way, the Satellite Broadcasters Association, and Khajiit. And we're certainly glad to have more sponsors. So if your logo is not here and you want it to be, please contact me and we'll figure out how to get that done. Excuse me. So with that, I want to just jump into our federal and state updates. And Jeff, you want to kick it off, please? And please, you guys, please introduce yourself. Most of the people know you, but we do have new folks who have joined us. And so I just wanted to make sure they know who you are.
Yeah. Everyone, Jeff Sabak, I'm the state broadband director. Dealing with a lot right now in terms of federal stuff. Steve mentioned EBB, and I appreciate all the help that everyone has given. That is definitely going to take a community effort to get to where we need to be. We had an RFP for consulting services that closed a little over a week ago. A lot of my time right now is grading and working with my peers on the selection panel to come up with the next level and the next group that we're going to be talking to. This is something that will eventually, I shouldn't say eventually, but actually pretty quickly, select a consulting firm to work with us on our highways program and others. We've had some amazing companies apply. From big to small. So I'm excited about that announcement. I can't give you a date today, but it'll be in the very near future.
Excuse me, Jeff, you might just want to clarify what that contract is for, please.
Yeah, so we're hiring a consultant basically to take a look at our fiber investments and our highways. Specifically, right now we have I-17 and I-19. ADOT has a ton of fiber in Maricopa County and a few other areas. And to use that as well as some of the stuff that we've learned from our other sister states like Utah in terms of building out a statewide middle mile network that's self-sustaining. And the term I use is that provides inexpensive, abundant bandwidth into our rural areas. As we talk to different carriers that want to do business in those areas, backhaul is a huge issue. Working with whether they're wireless or traditional ISPs. So we'll have some more announcements on this. I apologize. I wish I had a better way to explain it. Maybe I'll do a presentation, Steve, once we're through the process. But we're sort of in that evaluation process. We did have our webinar technical assistance sessions on Wednesday of last week. Had some really good feedback and questions, and talking about what went on. We had Brad Burgess from ADOT came on and talked about ADOT right-of-way policies, how they're structured over there. We work with Brad pretty much every day. And a little bit about the pending legislation regarding access to rights-of-ways for non-transportation purposes. Thank you for everybody who attended, and continue to do this as we move on. Lastly, I kind of want some help. If anybody is an expert on polling, I would really appreciate it. One of the challenges we have in some of our rural markets, in interesting carriers to get into that market, or in the case of, for example, an electric co-op or an existing actor in that market to get into the broadband business, is trying to understand the demand. And we really, after talking to a lot of these different folks in these different markets, I believe that polling is a good strategy to understand what the potential opportunity is. I know that Mojave Electric did that up in Bullhead City, and the response was overwhelming. So I know there's a lot being done with digital polling and in terms of how you ask the questions and how they get the responses. If you have expertise in this area and you'd like to help out, I'd love to talk to you just to get a handle on some suggestions, because I believe that this is going to be a big part of what we do in terms of driving innovation. We've got a couple very interesting fiber to the curb carriers coming to take a look at some areas in northern Arizona over the next couple of weeks. And as that progresses, I'll let you know. Both are very strong companies and would be lucky to have either one. So that's all I really had for today, Steve.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Any questions for Jeff? Okay, moving on. Mama, are you online?
Yes, I am.
I did have a question for Jeff,
Oh,
but
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I've got a cat in my lap and I fumbled my mouse. Jeff, I've recently, in my endeavors, doing what I endeavor to do, I've heard 3 different definitions of backhaul. Don't know why. Could you give me Jeff Sabatka's scripture definition of backhaul?
Well, there's I don't know about scripture, but there's I'll give you a couple examples. How about that?
That works.
Carriers that want to do business in some of our rural markets, in some cases, if you're going to build out a fiber network, particularly to the curb, we're going to have a ton of additional traffic. So if someone like CenturyLink hasn't built out enough capacity between, say, a mid-sized city in northern Arizona and Phoenix, your ability to do business is not good. Also, you're dealing in some cases with monopolies on that, what we call middle mile backhaul. Another example would be within Yuma County, which is a project we're working on with the county, is connecting the various population centers within the county back to that backhaul, which in turn goes to Phoenix. Within those population centers, there's even a more granular form of backhaul in that you have cellular towers. So we're working with T-Mobile, for example, in Page and some of the other markets around the state. T-Mobile needs 3 things to put up a new tower. They need electricity, they need fiber backhaul, and a willing local government who will work with them. And they're putting up a lot of these towers. So, for example, if T-Mobile were to put up a cell phone site, they would need fiber to the cell site. Verizon put up a bunch of towers, for example, in Yuma last year, and they used a division of Cox to provide that connectivity. In some cases, in all cases, they need to connect to a ring. What we like to do is build out a countywide ring, connecting up at that level, and then connecting from that countywide ring to take that traffic back to Phoenix, or in some cases, Las Vegas or to California. So those are the 3 different levels of backhaul, if you want to call it that. So basically, at a definition level, Wes, it's an aggregation of data traffic back to a central point or a data center.
Well, thank you. I just, this is all still so new to me that whenever someone says backhaul, I envision a shovel, a wheelbarrow, and a trench. So,
listen, I try to keep it. Hopefully that was simple enough. Mark could probably give you a much more technical definition, but at the end of the day, we talk to legislators and folks all day long, and the most important thing is that people understand it. A lot of really smart engineers in AirDOT and other places that can do this, but we just need to have folks understand it so we can get the thing built.
Okay. Well, I think I understand it enough not to embarrass myself.
Yeah. So again, if you're in a city, this is the way one of the carriers explained it to me. Actually, he said, we need backhaul out of, and I'm not going to name the city, because it's the difference between doing NASCAR where you're just going around in circles and you got nowhere to go, or you're doing something like a Dakar where it's a long race from across the country from A to B. Without that backhaul, you're literally just going in circles.
I think I understand now. Thanks a lot. I really appreciate that.
Sure.
And I don't want to jump in and divert, but Jeff, if I may, this is Ian with SBI. Being a rural carrier, I would add a fourth layer to those examples, and that would be diversity, right? Because we've got capacity, but we don't have diversity, and that's a real struggle for these northern AZ cities. We can get out towards Albuquerque, but it's very limited. AT&T doesn't want to play nice in the sandbox, so most of us end up on that I-17 corridor, waiting and watching the spark light buildup going through Pace. And so diversity is a real challenge as well.
Absolutely.
I think I understand now in terms of it, when you do something new at one end, you may have to expand or modify the capacity of everything to that end.
Yeah, I mean, in Texas, using E-rate funds, when I lived there, I worked for AT&T. They built fiber to a lot of the school districts, and the cost of bandwidth went down by about 90%. And part of that was they weren't paying expensive backhaul charges from the carriers. So, in your world, it's a big piece of, the ability to get the cost down and the bandwidth up.
Okay, well, thank you. I'm sorry, Steve. I'm watching poor old Steve sit there crawl out of his skin trying to get to the rest of the agenda while Jeff is taking me to school.
Not a problem, Wes. Okay, let's move on. Mala,
Yes,
Holly,
can
Mala, 1 second.
Yes.
Let's not talk about EBB now because we're going to do that a little later. But anything else?
Absolutely. I wasn't going to talk about EBB because we have something else that we want to introduce a little later. Okay. Just to add to what Jeff said, I think there were two other R's that I want to add. That is, we want to do this for reliability as well as redundancy to make sure that there's not just one connection going from one place to the other, but if it drops, you have some other redundant way to take the traffic through. Then jumping into E-rate, did a little bit of data analysis during the week, and we discovered that, at least I discovered that the applications this year has increased by not much. I expected it to increase a lot more, but it's increased only by 5% over last year. So we've gone up to this is the countrywide, has gone up to 3.1 billion from, and Arizona application went up from 127 million in 2020 to 144 million this year. The connections, the internal connections has gone up, the applications, but the applications for the internet has gone down, and it's going down steadily. The drop is, again, did a little more analysis, found that the drop was due to really good price drop. 79% has been the price drop in the last 3 years for the price of internet, which is tremendous. As Jeff was pointing out, Texas had a drop of 90%, again, due to the backhaul. And what Wes was asking me was actually leading me to give you this. Why is there a drop in the application? It is because of the drop in price. But it's also gone up in category 2, which is the internal connections, which means that once you get the fiber to the door or internet to the door, you've got to improve your internal connections. You've got to change your hubs, your routers. If there is hardwiring inside, you have to change that in order to accommodate the higher bandwidth that you're getting, especially in our older buildings where this hasn't been done for a while. And with the just before pandemic, this dialogue had started about how FCC can increase, can make this a better program. And starting with the 2021 budget cycle, they've increased the minimum that the small libraries and schools can apply to $25,000 from $9,000. It's also increased it's also talked about the budget cap, which was applicable to each building, school building or library building. So they could apply up to a certain maximum. But now they realize that they didn't want to put that to a maximum for each building. Instead, it's a maximum for the entire library system or the school district, and also a higher rate per student. So this has made the category 2 internal connection applications go up. So wanted to talk a little bit about ECF, because the deadline for submitting return comments was this Friday. Again, I monitored what was being what is being suggested to FCC. Some of the things, of course, was to simplify the process, simplify the audits, make schools and libraries that did the right thing by buying equipment during the pandemic, the hotspots, and distributing it, making sure it's not unfairly penalizing them for those purchases, and by asking for documentation and tracking their usage and things like that, which is typically what FCC would do if they were to apply this retroactively. The suggestion was to open the window from 1st of July to 30th of September, the second window. Also to modify the SIPA requirements, that it be applicable to equipment that belonged to the school or the library, but not enforced on other things. Because of the 100% reimbursement, the equipment budget cap was discussed, that there should be a budget cap per child. In the rural areas, different from that in the urban areas, and in the libraries per device, the price of a device that is being purchased and distributed. Of course, streamlining the PIA process, which is the review process, program integrity assurance review process, because when you submit an application to E-rate, they will automatically have the review process triggered, and there would be questions that come back. They are talking about not burdening people with this. And off-campus definition, not just the parking lot, but beyond, because some places the parking lot is very small, depends on the place where the building is situated. In other places, it extends really wide, but not to be more lax in the definition of off-campus. And the seismic shift, this is the last one, but a huge one, the seismic shift is on education delivery, where education is taking place and how. So again, those are the considerations that they wanted FCC to take when creating the rules. I have one small but a large announcement to make about the Connect Arizona site. School Connect had a Civic Impact Award for 2021. And I'm really happy to say that Tracy Beal was awarded the Founding Hearts Award and Civic Leadership Award. Tracy's not here today. She is with her grandchildren in Maryland, but let's all give her a hand, an applause, a round of applause. Can you mute the mic for whoever's?
Does anybody else hear that? There's a bunch of people that are unmuted.
Yes, I can hear it very well, and I think it's really annoying. If you can mute all of us except me, of course.
Could you repeat that last word thing you said, Mala? I couldn't hear it.
Yes, the Civic Impact Award for 2021.
Yes.
School Connect honored Tracy Beal, with the Founding Hearts Award and the Civic Leadership Award. They also awarded the Arizona State Library for collaborating with the stakeholders, Arizona stakeholders in the AZBSN, and creating the Wi-Fi hotspot map and helping bridge the digital divide with our digital inclusion program. So just wanted to share that with you, and congratulations to Tracy and to the State Library for winning this award. We will talk about EBB a little later, and Ilana will update, right, Ilana, will you update us about the what we've been doing with EBB so far? Not now, but when Steve says, thank you, when Steve is ready to go. And Holly,
Sure.
did you have anything that you would like to add about the State Library?
I think you covered it all, Mala. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any questions for Mala? Okay, moving on. Janet Major, are you online? Didn't see her. I know she always has conflicting meetings on Monday morning. Jeff, is there anything that you need to report there regarding telemedicine? Jeff, are you still there? Okay.
Hey, Steve, this is Ian with SBI, and I know Janet would report this and Jeff, but and most may be familiar on the call, but there is the telehealth money that's out there, the 250 million that they're going to have a 7-day window opening on April 29th, running through May 6th. There's another teleconference on it today about the eligibility of it, but it's designed to cover broadband, any connected devices pertaining to anything that started March 13th of 2020 and will be 1 year of funding to catch up through this year, or 1 year of funding from this year through next year. And it's broadband, telecommunications, and connected devices that support anything to do in the telehealth space or in secondary education pertaining to any classes or education or on-campus telehealth sites. So it's going to go fast. It's a 7-day window, opens up April 29th, and it'll be really good for the telehealth. And it's not just rural. Typically, USAC's fund focuses in the rural space. This is rural and metro funding. So if you don't know about that, there's really good information on the USAC website under the rural healthcare and some good links, and you can join the webinar today and watch for the window opening up on the 29th.
Thanks, Ian. And I believe that all of that information is on the updates, events and updates page on our website. As you know, every week I put up a web page with the most recent information, and Janet had sent them a number of announcements about various trainings and resources. And so that information is available on that web page. Okay, moving on. Sophia?
Hello, good morning, everybody. The main update that I have from ADE is that we announced last week that we would use some of our federal set-aside funding to fully fund the school safety grant, which funds positions for school counselors and school social workers. More schools applied than the legislature allocated money for, so we've used some of our federal funding to close the gap and fund every position requested by schools. And we announced that at a press conference last week. I will also put either in this chat or in the chat next week, we've got a new web page up with all the things we've spent our federal funding on, so that the public transparently knows what we're focused on and what we're spending money on. Does anyone have any questions for me?
No, but I got to thank you for my members on this school safety grant thing. That is classic Kathy Hoffman to see to those kind of needs. So when you see her, tell her we love her and we thank her.
Thank you, Wes.
Mylan, are you online? Okay. So Leah, I'm sorry.
I have a check-in with Mylan later this week. I'll bring updates to next week's call from him.
Sounds good. I know he joins us when he can, but I think he also has a conflicting meeting on Monday morning, so he can't always be here. So Leah, I thought I saw you online. Can you want to give us a quick update?
Sure, happy to. My name is Leah Marcus Peterson. I chair the board of the Arizona Corporation Commission. And for those that aren't familiar, we regulate the utility industry, have limited jurisdiction in telecom, railroad, pipeline, and so on. So I've been working on the Arizona Universal Service Fund. This last meeting in about 2 weeks ago, I think, earlier April, I presented to the other commissioners, and there are 4 others. So we're 5 total that were elected statewide. But I presented to them what was the Arizona Universal Service Fund. And it's a fund we collect. It's generated about $1.2 million. So it's not a lot, but it's coming off folks' telecom bills. And we are utilizing that for high cost areas for landlines. And with the shift, what I presented was the history and our regulatory authority over it, and wanted to ask their interest in exploring the use of the fund, this high cost fund, for broadband use, and with a focus on rural Arizona and low income areas that lack broadband access. This was not for a vote, this was for discussion. I presented to them some ideas I'd heard from this task force and from others related to, we could potentially use it for matching funds for federal programs. We could help fund grant writers or consultants to develop local city or town broadband plans. We could get involved in the pole attachment agreements and pole upgrades, you know, kind of happening with that transition or that collaboration between the utility industry and telecom. We could directly contribute it to a state broadband office like Jeff Sabatka's efforts. So I just was putting that out there. And there was also talk during the meeting of just eliminating the fund. Is it necessary to continue charging customers this fund? So we'll see where it goes. Right now, we ended the meeting with my commitment to work with our legal division at the commission to draft some language that would put it on a future agenda for a vote. So we'll go that direction. My intent is to draft language with legal related to broadband use in rural Arizona and low income areas. And we'll see how broad I can make that language so we can use it for different items. But just wanted to give you that update. So we're continuing to work on it. And then secondly, I don't know if Jeff is still on the line, but I know he's had conversations with utility companies about pole attachments and things like that. I was happy to refer him to a large transmission company recently who's building transmission lines from New Mexico into Arizona. And maybe I'm just worried about coordination, and as federal dollars come and state efforts are happening, whether it's in electric or it's in telecom, I want to make sure we're all talking to one another. So poor Jeff, I just keep referring people to him. So hopefully that will help maximize our dollars. And that's it from me, Steve.
So Leah, when we had this discussion earlier, and you sort of addressed it today, was that, you know, the last meeting that you had with the commission, that it wasn't the expectation that there would be any particular vote. But do you have a sense of, and again, I know you mentioned that there was some discussion about doing away with the fund altogether. Did you have any sense from them about, you know, doing away with the fund or repurposing it for broadband? And again, it wasn't the specifics about that, but generally, do you have a sense from them at this point or not?
No, I mean, if you were watching the meeting, if anyone was watching, it's public, it's recorded, you can check it out. Commissioner Olson brought up, is the fund necessary? So I heard that from his direction. Others kind of nodded and understood the need for broadband. And that I showed them the map where we have really low broadband access in different parts of the state, and they seemed okay with that. I didn't receive any pushback or really any other ideas related to the fund. So I just wanted to verify as we move forward that I had their support to work with legal and put together a rule. So that's the direction I'll go. It doesn't look like it'd be a unanimous vote at this time, but we only need 3. So we'll see what happens.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Steve, this is Jeff. I was going to say, she's done amazing work. I mean, this fund was just, I don't even know what you would describe it as just non-performing. It really had no real function. And she's taken this thing and made it front and center and actually going to get some good use out of it. I think that they're in a really unique position, the Corporation Commission, because they do regulate the electric utilities. And I think she hit on this earlier. One of the real challenges we have with rural broadband is that relationship between the carriers and the electric utilities in terms of access to pole rights, how those rates are set. Does a pole need to be replaced? Will they even do business with each other? And she's jumped into that as well, which I think is great. You know, moving forward, I think that I would like to see the fund remain and just be deployed in a strategic way. I mean, I'm all for tax cuts, but I think that this is something that there's a real need here. You know, this is like gas taxes for the highway. This is something that we can deploy, and if done correctly, it's not a lot of money, but it can be deployed very strategically in a certain area. And I'm just glad that Commissioner Marquez Peterson is doing the job that she's doing, because nobody really jumped on this the way she has.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. I appreciate that. And wanted to let you know too, the communication we had from the dais was that there's confusion. There's federal dollars, billions of dollars flowing around the nation. But my explanation to them was, if you're in a small town, rural Arizona, you need to have the capability and the resources to write the grant to go after the federal dollars.
Right.
And we are lacking that. I know we've talked about that for years. So I said, if our little bit of money here, the 1.2 million, can go to help provide access for these rural communities so they can tap into those federal dollars, because I'm sure it's first come, first serve. That's going to be sucked up around the nation. So I think there's still a role for the funding. I'll just see if I can convince 2 other commissioners.
Yeah, I think, Leah, as I was saying earlier, and that I've heard from you, is that it seems like the first step is, well, first of all, whether the fund will continue, and then secondly, if there's a commitment to change the purpose for broadband, and then the third step of that is, for what purposes then would it be used for broadband? If that's my takeaway, am I on track with that?
Yes, that's exactly it. The next steps.
Okay.
Commissioner, I have a question.
Sure.
In these discussions for broadband, are you thinking about at some point including last mile build outs, or at least addressing the need for last mile connection?
Well,
When we do the broad.
That's a good question, Wes, but we authorize the eligible telecommunication carriers, ETCs they're called, that do business in our state. And so we have about 14 or so that have access at this point to the funds. Nobody applies for these funds right now, this 1.2 million, except for Frontier, which was back in 1989, because it requires a rate case. So they have gotten automatic deployment of about $700,000 every year since 1989 without any additional rate case or accountability. So that's wrong, right? So our tool is obsolete. So at this point, no one's really wanting to take on this universal service fund, because the way in which it's structured is not something that's attractive. You're not going to see these telecom companies coming in for rate case with us. We don't regulate their pricing. The federal government does, right? The FCC. So we need to completely change how it's structured. So right now, a lot of those last mile operators are not eligible to apply. Right now, it's just the 14. And I have a map that I can shoot to Steve so he can see exactly who we regulate at this point. With all the rural dollars flowing in, and Jeff would know better than I about all the different funds coming in, we are seeing on our agendas, I'll just say, a lot of different telecom companies wanting to do business in the state, and they show up on our agenda because they've applied for access through that ETC designation. So I think in our April or May 4th agenda, we might have 10 of them on our agenda. So we're seeing a lot of activity.
So Steve, this is Gene. I don't know if Jeff or Leah want to explain more the issue around pole attachments. I know from our perspective, when we started looking at rural areas, it's our understanding that last person on the pole has to replace the pole. So it's rather cost prohibitive, to be honest, at this point in time, for somebody like Cox to move into other areas just because of that cost. You know, there could be hundreds of poles. So when you start to add that up, it becomes extremely expensive.
Well, and Commissioner, I guess I'll add this little part about the Final Mile project. Is our goal is to use some of this enormous amount of money that's sort of floating over our heads, kind of like the clouds now in Phoenix. And it's a concept we want people to become aware of before they go to spending money. Because once those decisions, a whole lot of times made at the county board of supervisors level are made, and that money starts, our hope is that it descends in areas that are well thought through and are very cost effective. So if you take the money, some of that grant money, and you go to an anchor institution and you build a tower and you broadcast CBRS out to families, then that's a very cost-effective way to also include small carriers who do not have to make that capital build out to make that happen, which I think is an enormously appropriate use of federal grant money. That's how we built. Well, I don't know how we built the highways. I was just a kid whenever they were building them. But hopefully you understand the analogy. And the last thing before I take up any more of Steve's time, the Arizona Rural Schools Association will do whatever we can do to support you with this move. So just let us know. I mean, it may be nothing, but if you can think of some way we can help through the Final Mile Project or just as the association alone, let us know. And we really appreciate you focusing on rural.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Wes. And I wanted to just stress in my last point, Steve, because I know you need to move on, that we are putting a lot of pressure and issues on Jeff's shoulders. So Jeff, here's a plug. You think there's so much happening at the federal level, the state, our needs, all of that. I just keep referring to Jeff, whether it's a community that's calling me and saying, I'm having trouble. Why isn't there fiber laid in my area? What are my options? Why do I only have one carrier? Because I get those calls. We're coordinating that through Jeff. And I know he's looking at federal dollars, state resources, and so on. So whether it's these dollars that we can utilize for the Arizona Universal Service Fund, whether we can expand fiber, which I know is long-term and it's in the ground through the Smart Highway Initiative that the governor's doing, or in the air on the pole attachments, or potentially through transmission lines, who knows if that would work out. We just want to do all we can to help support and help coordinate that effort, because there's so many moving parts in this industry and with this need that's throughout Arizona. And I know we all know that, but Jeff, I don't know what we can do to help support your effort. I see you as still a one-man effort. So if there's any letters we can write or resources we can find to help beef up your team, I think that's a real necessity at this point.
Thank you.
Actually, I think the Jeff we see right now is an avatar, because no one human being can do what Jeff does. So my guess is he has got to have an avatar or two, because what he's trying to do is superhuman.
Now, you know what we do is quite honestly, we partner with other groups, you know, in education. We partner with Mylan and Mala and the libraries, and we partner with ADOT and Brad Burgess and the Sun Quarter Network and Derek. And, you know, everybody seems to work pretty well together. I have asked for some help for next year. Our fiscal year starts July 1, so I'm going to keep my fingers crossed on that one. But, you know, there's a lot of work to be done to address Gene's question earlier. I think pole attachments are a huge issue. And at some point, we're going to have to all sit down and talk about this. You know, dealing with Cable One Sparklight and some of the challenges they've had. This is something that needs to be talked about. And I'm sure we can come up with an equitable arrangement for everybody because this is just too important. You know, this is something that needs to get done. Wes, in regard to you know, CBRS and what y'all are doing, I think it's great. I think that connecting kids at home is a priority. This is something that will get done quickly and effectively, and it'll work. I will also say that I've spent a lot of time talking to my counterpart in Colorado, and one of the things that they've been able to pull off in Colorado is fiber to the premise and working with some of these carriers. And this isn't going to work in every market, but in some of these economically attractive markets, I'll give you an example like Prescott. That is a very attractive market to carriers. I think that you're going to see a lot of folks look at those cities just like they're looking at Gilbert today. I tell people that Prescott's the new Gilbert. This is the direction it's going. There's 250,000 people in Gilbert right now. I expect Prescott to have Prescott Valley, Chino Valley to have that number of people probably in the next 10 years. So we have to start building these long-term partnerships. We have to address the education. As you mentioned earlier, there's a lot of stuff that we have to do at the same time. I'm just thankful for the help I'm getting, and we're going to do the very best we can and make this happen.
Well, and this is a clumsy analogy, but yes, we focus on the kid with the CBRS solution, but within that broadcast area to the kid's house, there also exists enormous capacity for commodity internet. So it offers economic development on two ends. You got the mom and pop ISPs who may be able to deliver perfectly dependable internet to the kid, and then commodity internet out to whoever else is in that area, but they can't afford the initial capital investment. So of course, I'm going to think it's probably the best thing since sliced bread and ice cream, but I do think it's a concept that has great promise.
We need
It really
to.
is.
Okay, we need to move along. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we need to move on, but just a couple of things. One is just to be clear, Wes, that the Corporation Commission does not regulate all the broadband providers, and actually they don't regulate broadband, if I understand correctly. Am I correct with that, Leah and Jeff?
Yes, we have limited jurisdiction.
Yeah, I'm aware of that, but the commissioner is a voice that I believe people is the voice that people will listen to.
Yeah.
And
so the question is,
how do we
move forward with that? But just as a reminder, Jeff or Mala, whoever, just want to take a couple minutes just to talk about the commitment that the commission did make a couple of years ago that enabled us to use that money as a match for federal E-rate. So anybody want to just jump into that quickly?
Yeah, I can talk about that. And the fact that the commission actually increased the rate slightly so that we could build a little pot of money that could be used as a match for the E-rate federal dollars really went a long way. So E-rate expected that that the state matches 10% or up to 10% of any fiber build out, and they would put in the remaining money. So if a school district had 80% NSLP, that means they got back 80% of E-rate dollars that was spent. Then if the state put in 10%, E-rate would put in an additional 10%. So it would be at no cost to the school district. And we've built about 1,500 miles of fiber using that. And that 10% has brought into the state the remaining 90%, which is over $111 million so far in the last 3 years. Thanks to Corporation Commission for doing that.
So just to be clear that, so the Corporation Commission basically approved using the Universal Service Fund. I believe it was $8 million that they committed, plus was it 3 million from the governor's office? So it was $11 million that provided a match for 110 some odd million.
Yes, that's correct. That's exactly right.
So that's a perfect example of how to be able to leverage that money. And I think that's the important question is, with the small amount of money that's there, of how do we, if they keep that fund, how do we best leverage that money to be able to accomplish a whole lot more. And so we need to move on. And Derek, it looks like you were ready to say something anyway.
Yeah, well, I was just trying to be prepped so I could be quick, because I know we're running short on time.
Where you're on now.
All right. So I guess the big thing I would talk about today is and it dovetails nicely with what Wes has been talking about, and that's our 2 and 3 projects, or our networking to the home projects. We've been working with my elementary school in the Isaac School District, and that network is up and running, serving students in their homes. I don't know if anybody's seen the news coverage. Channel 12 and Fox 10 in the Phoenix Valley both covered that project with some pretty exciting video. And next step for us is we're working with the Welcome to America Pact. to deliver a similar network to the refugee communities in Phoenix, and as well as working with CBRS networks in the city of Page, the Tohono O'odham Community College, Diné College, and Navajo Tech. And given the the upcoming rounds of funding around this particular need, we continue to consider the establishment of an EREC consortium to help with these kinds of projects statewide. The middle mile projects are progressing nicely. This is a shift now from delivery to the home, but the I-17 project, we've divvied up into 3 segments. They're all 3 out for construction RFPs. The I-19 project is in RFP prep. That RFP should be posted soon. And on the 40, we're fingers crossed that the funding cycle is successful, and we're having our next round of meetings, this time with carriers in the Flagstaff area, not this week but next, and then continuing to work on establishing EduRoam statewide, working with pilot school districts to get it deployed. We're working with Metro to consider putting it on their public network, and continue to be interested in libraries and museums and carrier networks as well. That's all I got today.
Is that all? So Derek, since you've been full-time in this position, you have accomplished a huge amount and really have expanded the reach for the Sun Corridor Network. It's very exciting to see the work that you guys are doing.
Thanks, Steve. The state needs it, so we're leaning in.
Yeah,
it's exciting times.
I know. I think the Isaac School District was a big partnership with ASU, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, absolutely. Yep. I mean, we are a department at ASU, so it was us and our colleagues at ASU. Yeah, and a number of others partnered on that project as well. SICLU and Tech Compass and whatnot. So yeah, group effort.
Okay. So any questions for any of those folks before we move on?
Yeah, Derek, is that this is Henry? Is that Isaac School District network? Is that a CBRS network or?
Interestingly, that one's a millimeter wave network, not CBRS. The distances were such that that we could cover it with millimeter wave and get a little better performance out of it. So it's millimeter wave.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Derek, this is Jeff. Quick question for you, and this is probably way off topic, but Nicole sort of set the groundwork with a lot of her work in regard to digital divide training, digital access issues, and I know Lev is pressing on that as well. How do you see that happening? Do you see that this is something that's going to be taught? Obviously K-12 kids, we can teach it in a school setting, but how do we work with some communities that have a lot of seniors in different groups. How do we help with the digital access issues? I mean, do you see that role being handled by nonprofits? Do you see the state handling that? How do we get that done? What are the latest ideas on that?
Man, that's a great question, Jeff, and maybe a good focus for the broadband stakeholder network or for this task force. It's a group effort. I mean, the elderly, for example, I think we work with them through their community centers, or there are a number of successful programs nationally where the local high school pulls a bunch of volunteers together and goes out to a community center I think all options ought to be on the table. Often, in-person training is most effective with certain communities, and that's a bit of a challenge because those communities tend to be more vulnerable to the coronavirus as well. So I don't know. I think we have to have all options on the table. I think nonprofits, but I think leveraging existing constructs that people know and trust is probably our best and most effective bet.
That's kind of what I was thinking as well. And I was just curious, maybe you can run this by Lev. One of the things that I guess the second President Bush did really well was they did private partnerships with faith organizations, churches, synagogues,
Yes.
mosques.
Yes.
And I think that that's an area that we, that we really need to start exploring, because, just like getting people vaccinated, people will do that if they're talking to somebody who's trusted from their community, and not just, I'm here from the state to help you kind of thing.
Yeah,
And,
yeah,
I
that
would
local
love to
trust is key.
Find a way, and that's something I could definitely get behind if we could come up with a strategy for that.
Well, Jeff, I think that's a good transition because we do need to move on. But it does kind of relate to what we're trying to do with EBB at this point. And that's really is a big issue about how do we reach out to all these different groups and organizations. And since we have limited amount of time, I want to jump into the EBB. Just one quick comment, and I wish we had had more time today, but we don't. But we did have our networking event the other night. About 18 people joined us. And some of the feedback was that maybe we need to do, I think those who participated in the topic areas really felt that having that forum for discussion was useful. So we need to be looking at, they're not sure whether that networking format was the best thing. So we need to talk about that. But I think there was some real interest in having some kind of either ongoing or occasional workshops on various topics. So again, we don't have time to get into that today, because I do want to jump into the discussion about EBB and the great work that people, whoops, it should be refreshed here. Give me a second here. So Tracy Beal really has really stepped up and taken a leadership role, along with Elena Lowry, Nicole, Cindy Hogan, and Mala. And so I want to turn it over to Alana. And I don't know if Nicole's online. I know Cindy is online. And if you guys could kind of bring us up to date on where we are, and then what you think needs to happen next, how people can help you.
Yeah, Steve, I'll go ahead and I'll be quick. So we have put together, I hesitate to call it a toolkit, but for our purposes, that's what I'm going to call it. And I'm going to be sending this out to you today, Steve, to get it out to everybody. Okay. But we put together basically a toolkit that everybody can send to their networks. We also I did a press release that I'll be working with the media on. What we're kind of doing is we're trying to promote an expanded Connect Arizona website that includes all of the EBB information. But our toolkit that I'm going to send everybody has a number of things that will be sent to you in an attachment, including a sample email that you can use. You can put your logo on it. You can just use it as your email to send to your networks. So it includes the sample email that kind of has a statement of need, kind of explains, what the EBB program is, and the whole idea of getting people signed up. We have something that Cindy put together, which is a slide deck as a PDF of a step-by-step instructions on how to sign up for EBB. We have a flyer in both Spanish and in English. We have actually a half-page printable flyer in Spanish and English that we're hoping people can send, and then maybe others will print it out and even take it to places like grocery stores, or if you have connections at laundromats, anywhere where there are people going, who might then pick it up, and at least it has a phone number on it, it has the website on it, so that if you want to learn more about EBB and sign up for it, all of the information is right there. And then there's also like an FAQ sheet that will also be attached, so that if you start getting questions or you're not sure how to answer something, all the information is there. You can send that out to your resources and your sources as well. We put a gigantic spreadsheet together of all of the people and organizations that when I say we, I mean Nicole and Mala and Cindy and Tracy and myself, who we can be sending it out to. and that will include the media. But we know that this is a grassroots effort, and all of you have vast resources and lots of networks and your own circles of influence. And so what we're hoping is that you will customize the email however you see fit, and then get it out to your networks. And then Steve, I will be sending everything to you today so that you can then send it to everybody that's a member of this group. And then, the trickle down effect will hopefully take hold, and we'll be getting it out to as many people as possible. Also, we put together a very, very simplistic email. Sophia, if you're still on the call, that we're going to be sending to Sophia so that she can get it out to some educators to also try to share the information. We know that it's the end of the school year. We know teachers are very busy, things are winding down, but we want to get it in the hands where the call to action would be, please get this flyer into the hands of any of your students or families that you think might be eligible or want to sign up for EBB. So in a nutshell, that's what we're doing.
Okay. Cindy, you want to jump in and share anything more? Cindy, are you still there?
I caught up. The one piece that I feel is missing from our training is understanding, and I'm glad Jean is still on the call, is understanding our application process. And what we understand from the website is that we're doing eligibility. And then there's a next step of getting signed up. And I wondered if, as an ISP, Jean could tell us how, because in the USAC instructions, it talks about going to the shop. I'm not sure that there are shops that are available to go to. So I'd be curious to hear how Jean thinks we go after, if we ever organized a live sign-in event, we could take them as far as finding out their eligibility, but I'm not sure how we take the next step.
Good question, Cindy. We had this actually internal conversation Friday. So we've sent out, I think, about 170,000 emails and letters already to our base, those that are existing on a Connect to Compete, et cetera. We have our website that allows them to sign up for the program. I think, and I'm not sure if Ilana, if this is in your messaging, but I think at this point in time, they need to understand, families need to understand that it is a limited funding program, that it may last a month, it could last 12 months. I mean, obviously, the more and more people that are signed up for it, the quicker the funding will dissipate. So I think there's two scenarios. One is to understand, they need to understand when they do sign up that it is a limited time frame. Number two, what happens after that time frame? Are they going to continue with the service, or are they going to drop the service? Also understanding that there's potential down the road, from a USAC perspective, E-rate to increased funding for that. But I think you need to make your customers, your families aware that it is a limited program, so they don't think that it will go forever, because we don't know how long it's going to last ourselves from a Cox perspective. But we do have a website, and I can put that on our. I can make sure I think I sent that to Steve a week or so ago, but I will update that. So at least from a Cox perspective, you'll know what we're putting out and how they sign up for our services.
And does it show where you sign up if you're not already a customer?
Correct. It shows it. It will give them the requirements. So, and I've also been working with our school districts. We're already getting questions from our districts in regards to how do they notify their student population. So we're working through that also with them.
This is Sharika. I guess my misinterpretation, I thought it was a one-year program for families if they signed up. So I guess that is not correct. If you're saying it's funding, if the funding runs out, the funding runs out.
Correct.
That's correct, yes.
So
It's
I guess families.
3.2 billion, dollars that has been allocated to this program for the whole country. So, and it will run out soon. It is on a first come first serve basis, or if the pandemic concludes, it will last for 6 months beyond the pandemic. I don't see it ever doing that because it's going to the money is going to go.
So I'm just thinking about the communication, or how, I mean, I know we can definitely communicate that, but I'm just thinking about how families would know in a sense of their budget. Like if they sign up for this and then it's like they got it for 3 months, 6 months, and then they get a bill not knowing that it ran out, like what that communication would look like and that hardship that could possibly be on a family in the long term.
That's not the way it works, Sharika. What they say is if the fund is going to come to an end at the end of this month, they will notify them at the beginning of the month to say that this is all that we are paying for. And after that, it's up to them whether they want to drop the program or move on to Lifeline. The Lifeline program, of course, is, I don't want to call it a perennial program, but it's kind of like that. It's not dependent on the pandemic funding. So that will continue if they want to continue that way. The only thing that is not very clear yet is whether the devices that they are given would be theirs to keep, or would they have to be turned turned back to the service provider for repurposing? I have no idea. That's still kind of up in the air. I haven't seen any documentation that kind of specifically talks about that. But other than that, they can move over to Lifeline, and Lifeline is so undersubscribed, it can handle a lot more.
Okay, yeah, I'm just thinking out loud, so thank you.
Right.
Well, are you saying, Mala, that the service provider will inform the customer that their funding has run out for the program when the month before or something? Is that?
Yes, the service provider is supposed to do that because the service provider is the one that's getting the funding. It's not direct payment to the household. It is paid through the service provider, and it is the service provider definitely would know or would be informed about the money running out for their community.
And it's definitely an opt-in situation where they would physically have to opt in if they're going to continue with any kind of service with the provider they're with. So that nobody is going to get charged for the next month.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I want to touch on a couple of things real quickly. And Jeff, if you're still online, you sort of touched on the issue. And this is something that I think has evolved as we've been having this discussion about EBB, is the outreach to all these different groups and organizations and the challenges in doing that. But I think it's the first step to what you were talking about earlier, that we have all these nonprofit groups, we have faith-based groups, we have all kinds of organizations out there, but we don't have a good mechanism at this point to connect with all of those. As Elena mentioned, they have a list of folks. I have a bunch of people. Mauricio's got connections. We've got a lot of different folks, but we don't have a good way to connect all those folks at this point. And so I think that certainly pointed out the challenge. And of course, that's been the emphasis also of the FCC, is to work through existing groups and organizations to get the word out there. So
I have one more question, Steve, to Glenn.
Yeah, go ahead, Sharika.
So in regards to, so is it Cox is going to apply for a certain amount, or is it just, or you know, does the provider say this is how much we're applying for to give back out, and so that's how you guys will manage how much money you have?
From our perspective, it's how many people sign up. So we don't have a dollar number that we're managing. It's if I sent out 150,000 emails and 100,000 of the folks qualified via the program, then that's what we would be
Requesting.
funding and billing.
Sharika, the way it was explained to me, and this was several weeks ago, so it may have changed, was that Cox would submit a list of folks that qualified and signed up. The feds would validate it, and then they would get a check within like 15 days. That way they would have the ability to, give the credit for $50. I've heard all sorts of, bottom line is it's a pot of money that when it's gone, it's gone. So I've heard everything from 9 to 12 months. I've heard less than that. It remains to be seen. That's why it's so important that we organize, because whether that money goes to Arizona or any other state, it's just going to be based on the number of people who actually, take the time to subscribe.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
So Jeff, the first step of this process, which again is really appreciate the work that Nicole and Elena and Tracy and everybody has been doing, was that we needed to have a place where all the information was available so that we can send people there and say, this is how you get information. And then the library, correct me if I'm wrong, Mala, that your navigators will be able to also help with answering some of these questions. Is that correct?
Yes, the navigators will be trained to help them. We're also recruiting more navigators to help with this program. I mean, it's not just this program. Of course, the navigators are helping with other things, but we had a county librarians meeting on Friday where Nicole and I presented this to them in the form of a video that's also going to be available. I think it's already available on Connect Arizona. And the county librarians hopefully they will have more of their staff trained on the documents that we are giving them, especially the higher level video that we presented to them about what the program is about and how they can come in and sign up. And hopefully they will be able to come in and sign up without having to make an appointment or just walk in, sign up. The libraries have scanners, they have trained staff, they have staff who are customer friendly, and they can definitely deal with this if they have to do it. So I think we're trying in all different ways to reach them. The only thing that Nicole and I were talking about this, we were talking about outreach being reactive and proactive. Of course, what I explained to you just now is reactive because people, when they call in, we will help them. But to reach people who are not calling in, that's the group we really want our partners to help us with.
Yeah, Stephen, I would also say that Sophia is doing some large scale stuff with K-12 around this. And I don't want to speak for her, but there are a lot of outreach efforts going on right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, I think one of the first steps was to be able to have the resource so that we can get the information to people. And then I think we're all getting ready to gear up and start getting the word out. Related to that, since we only have a couple more minutes on this meeting, is that we've been talking about getting 20,000 flyers printed. But part of the challenge with that is the distribution of those flyers. If we print 20,000 flyers, to the schools, it's a little bit easier. But when we talk about reaching out to other groups and organizations, it becomes a logistical challenge to do that. And so we need to figure, so the ideal, of course, is that as we get the information out about the toolkit and about the program, that various groups and organizations would download and print those flyers and make them readily available. 20,000 is a lot, but not a lot. And of course, a lot of those are going to go, Elena, correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of those would initially go to the school districts.
Well, we've specifically sent, or we're going to send Sophia a very simple email that asks for, educators to get it in the hands. We've asked Sophia about the opportunity to print, so I don't know if she wants to jump on, but we are hoping that the organizations will just print it out and on their own print out, 1,000 or 500, you know, so that's the biggest challenge. That's why we did the half page, so that if we could at least, you know, get it into some local, you know, just different locales where we know people are. That's another way. I mean, this is pretty grassroots. We're trying to work with, I know with Univision, you know, All In Education, which I know Stephanie Para, you know, is working with us as well to get information into the hands of her Leadership Academy folks, who also are going to send it out. I plan on getting it into the hands of like Valley Leadership and West Valley Leadership and Tempe Leadership. Those are all very active, you know, individuals who will, you know, and I'm going to mention in my email as I customize it that we're hoping that they can print out the flyers and get some of them out. But in terms of a mass printing, we don't really have a budget.
I think I saw that we were looking at the latest was $1,000 for the printing.
Yeah.
We can deal with
but
that.
That's only for one side, and we were thinking about, you know, how do we, you know, we want to get the English on one side and maybe Spanish on the other, so that's going to double the printing costs. So we're still in that mode of trying to figure that piece out.
Yeah.
Unless there's somebody who's willing to step up and just do the printing for us.
Well, and again, the question is, so if we print 20,000 flyers, how are we going to get them distributed and to who? That is a logistical nightmare, frankly. But Elena, maybe you and I can chat a little bit after this meeting. Was that sure. Mauricio?
Steve, actually, this is Marnie Anbar. I'm just on my phone. I'm sorry, and I Marnie. Just want to, that's okay. That's all right. I don't mind being confused with somebody else who's wonderful. So have the Tempe leadership, I've been in Tempe leadership. The leadership group, at least in Tempe, which is affiliated with the Tempe Chamber of Commerce, might be great in terms of trying to help you find those entities who'd be willing to share the printing cost. So, you know, for my 2 cents, what I would put in is that, you know, when you're sending to those groups, you know, be thinking strategically about, you know, who in the chambers, you know, might be willing to step up and, you know, maybe not do all 20,000 flyers, but, you know, might take 1,000 and do them for free or whatever, you know, find a consortium like that. But in terms of distribution, especially if I'm understanding correctly, you know, trying to get the word out to the families that need it, my recommendation would be to try to partner with Boys and Girls Clubs and the Valley of the Sun YMCA, which the Valley of the Sun YMCA actually has a huge reach beyond the Valley into our state. And if there's anything I can do to help, you know, facilitate your contacts with those organizations, I'd be happy to help.
Yeah, thanks, Marty. Those are all groups that are on our list, both here, and Cindy's got Tucson connections as well. So yeah.
I have a quick question really quickly before we end. I sent out an email already to all of the superintendents in Apache County. I've talked to our Apache County State Librarian, and we've got some things already going on that email. I'm sure the school districts and this office can print the flyers that are needed. In the email that you're sending out, is all of that information going to be in there so we can just distribute it here in Apache County as we see fit from what you're sending? I haven't seen any email from you yet, and I would really love to have that.
Yeah, I had to get it, you know, I kind of had to get everybody's approval, you know, which I did on Friday. And so it's ready to go. I did add in a couple of things just from listening to the meeting today. So I'm not sending it individually to all of you. I'm sending it to Steve, and then Steve will get it out to everybody.
Yep.
Hopefully today.
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you.
And for clarification, Alana, this toolkit that you talk about, does that include all the things, the email and the EBB program and the PDF and the flyer and the fact sheet? Is that what's in the toolkit, or?
Yep, that's everything. And like I said, the email, you can shorten it, you can customize it, you can put your logo on it, whatever you want to do. I'm sending it as a Word doc. You can cut and paste it into your own email, change, you know, whatever you want to do with it. You know, it's there for you to send to anybody you see fit. And we talked about duplication efforts. I don't think that it matters. I think the more we send out, if people get it twice, they could ignore the second one. But at this point, we just need to get it out and start the process.
And just what Elena's talking about personalizing, I think that people getting email from people they know asking them for help is more significant than, for example, coming from just the task force, for example.
Right.
But coming through existing groups and organizations that people are already connected to and know and trust is probably most effective. Okay, so do we have any other any announcements, anything else going on? Elena, Nicole, Cindy, anybody have anything more they want to add about EBB?
Steve, if I may.
Yeah, Mala.
Tomorrow, FCC has an emergency broadband benefit webinar that's at 3 p.m. EDT. There is no sign up required for it. You can go to this FCC, you can Google FCC and emergency broadband benefit webinar and you will get to it. It starts at 3 EDT, that's 12 o'clock our time. And it is supposed to be very comprehensive, hopefully answers all the questions. FCC is also doing what we've already done. They said they're going to put out a toolkit, flyers, etc. But well, we didn't know when it was going to come, and we have done ours already, and it's good to go. But those who have any questions or any doubts about EBB, that's what I would encourage you to attend. So that's tomorrow.
Yeah. And I did send that email announcement about that workshop to everybody, I believe is on Friday. So hopefully you have that email if you're interested in participating in that. Okay, anything more about EBB? So,
quickly, Steve, am I just being a bull in the china closet here, trying to push through something out of TOPOC as a proof of concept project at a school while everybody else is, I'm just trying to get a guidance on whether or not you guys want me to proceed. And if the answer is no, that's fine, because there's plenty of outreach going on and developing. If so, I just need the names of 2 people based on your judgment. To whom do I report? And I believe that is Tracy. And to whom do I turn for support, which I believe is Cindy, informed by Mala. So you're the executive guy here. Tell me what to do.
Well, I think you pretty much covered it, but Wes, let's take that offline. And Elena, maybe you want to address that a little bit, or Cindy, since Tracy's not here today.
I can stay online with the 2 of you after this.
That's a good idea. Maybe Elena, if you can stay online too, maybe we can get this address this. I don't want to, this meeting's pretty much over at this point. Anybody have any other announcements or anything?
Steve, the 31st is a holiday, just a FYI. I see it on your calendar.
Okay.
Steve, I sent you a couple documents for Cox. If you want to put them on the site, one is an FNQ.
Okay. Sounds good.
I didn't know how to put a doc in the chat.
Okay, great. So anything else? If not, thank you all for being here today. And I really want to thank the folks who have been doing all this work on this. It's just phenomenal, the amount of effort. It's a big challenge to go from 0 to accomplishing the things that they've done. So really want to appreciate all your leadership with that. And with that, I think we're done for today. Thank you all. See you all next week.
Cheers.
Yes.
Steve.
Yeah.
Steve, I only have a few minutes because I have a 9 o'clock meeting.
Okay.
Me too.
Yeah, and I want to talk to you, Elena, some more. I have some questions and thoughts and so forth to talk about. And so maybe a little later today, we can do that.
Sure.
Okay, well, while other
So
folks
I
are.
think the proof of concept is a really good idea if you've got it kind of underway, and just to see how it goes and to maybe get us up to speed to do some more. I don't know.
Well, I have it underway to the extent that I've talked to that superintendent and his school secretary. Also, I have it underway to the extent that I think Tupac Elementary District is a good choice because there's internet out there.
Good. That's my first.
And so it meets that criteria. It's just expensive. Yeah, it's just expensive. So, and a good deal of the demographics of that community are people who work in the service industry up along the river, up and down the river. So
Wes, here's my thought. And again, since Cindy and Elena and everybody have really been taking the lead on this, I will defer to them. But here's my thought, that once we get the stuff from Elena with the intro email, that it seems to me that we should send that out and see how they deal with it, see what challenges they have, what problems, what they don't understand, because that's really what the proof of concept is about. If we send an email to somebody and it says, this is what you're supposed to do, is it clear? Can they get what they need? How do they get questions answered? So it won't be a perfect process, in my opinion, this first time out, but that's what proof of concept is about, right?
Right, you get started, you make all the mistakes you're gonna make.
Yep.
And like I said, John, the superintendent there, John Warren, is ready. So if we can get them the materials, and what's key is to get his secretary, who is the face people see when they walk in that district, get her hooked up with someone so she can have some conversational training.
Yeah.
And also, Mala, a quick question for you. There, I assume there's a library somewhere near there. Am I correct?
Yes. And I can send you the address and details.
Then we can get them working together.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll even make a site visit out there to talk to John, sort of mind map how that works coming in the door. Actually, I'll be talking to his secretary because John is, he's wise enough to know that to do something like this, he needs a responsible adult on his end who is his secretary. So if I've got the head nod, then I will proceed to make every mistake we can possibly make to inform what we're doing. I shall report to Tracy, and then I will look for support, operational support from Ilana and Cindy and Mala. Does that make sense to everybody?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
All right, well, let's go forth and practice the Indiana Jones theory of project management. We'll just make this up as we go along. It's time to get rolling, boys and girls.
Yes.
Wes, I put the email and the press release in the chat just so you can see it. It just, the other files need to be compressed and it won't let me upload them to the chat.
Would you just send those to me by email? Do you have?
Yeah. Well, Steve's gonna send it all out. I just thought if you wanted to see the email.
Yeah,
so
I do, that way I can get it to Carrie. That's John's secretary, so she can start thinking about this in her head. And also, Mala, if I can get a contact person at the library so I can hook Carrie and that person up so we can begin the thought process, the process.
So Mala, this is just a question I was thinking about yesterday and today, and you don't have to necessarily answer this now, just to throw it out there. But as I mentioned, we've been talking about, if we have 20,000 flyers printed, distributing through the schools is certainly one thing, but can the libraries then be sort of a central place? So let's say we have 10 nonprofit organizations and they say, yeah, we want to participate, but we can't print the flyers. Can we get those somewhere? Is the library a possibility? The local library is a possibility to be a distribution point for those?
The local libraries could be a point where they could come and pick up. I can't guarantee that the local libraries have funds to do the printing.
I understand.
Pima County actually said that they have a print shop and they would print it for all of Pima County branch libraries.
Cool.
And the tribal libraries in Pima County. But I can't guarantee that others would do that. And when I asked at the county librarians meeting, there wasn't a jump up and down saying, yes, we will do it, because they're all looking at their budgets and stuff. So if it can be printed and delivered to them, I'm sure that they would be, they would find a way to put it out to the public. Most libraries have a box for flyers just outside their library that people could come and pick up. There are drive-throughs to pick up their books, so they could be at the drive-through place for them to pick up. I am sure it would happen if we printed it and gave it to them.
And
well,
Steve, I've asked Ilana if it's okay. I'm going to go to Deer Valley Unified's graphic communications print shop. They do all the stuff for Arizona Rural Schools. I'm going to straight up ask them how much they're willing to, as a public service, do the printing on this. They may not be able to, but it's a huge operation. What I'm going to ask them for is just to pro bono print 20,000 copies of this, English, Spanish, as a public service. Yeah, I'll ask for 20. If I get 5, we'll be okay. Or if I get them, if they just say don't do it. But if it's okay with Ilana, I'm going to approach them sometime today or tomorrow as soon as I have the flyer and just see what they'll say. You never know, they might do it.
Yeah, that's really the whole point of getting this out to everybody, because we know that everybody has contacts in different places in every corner of the state. And so I think that if you can get 1,000 printed or 5,000 printed, or however many you can get printed, I think we can, I know that it's a little haphazard, Steve, we can probably figure out how to get them in, at least into the hands of most of the art organizations that are on our list, the libraries. I mean, I think if we have them, we can get them out.
I have lots of low friends in high places.
Yeah, exactly. Me too. Me too. I mean, even businesses, some local businesses would be willing to keep the flyer, on their coffee shops. I don't know. I mean, obviously we want to reach, to me, laundromats and, some of the grocery stores in some of these communities, Dollar General. I mean, there are a lot of stores and a lot of businesses that I think would be willing to have the flyer. That, to me, if you can do it, great. But I think going higher level to organizations where this is their audience is going to be the way to reach people. However, Wes, if you've got 3 or 4 stores in your community that you think, they'd be willing to put some flat, great. I think individually we have to take that on.
Boys and girls, I got to go to another meeting.
Yeah, I do too.
I'll bumble off through this. Cindy, you'll be hearing from me. Mala, you'll be hearing from me. Lana, you'll be hearing from me. Steve, I'll let you know how I'm doing.
Sounds good.
All right, I'm out of here, boys and girls.
Steve, I gotta jump too. Do you want to just call me later? Or?
Yeah. Let's try and talk later this afternoon.
Okay, or maybe after you see all the information, you can reach out.
Yep, sounds good. Yeah, send me the information. Let me take a look at it, then let's try and talk maybe later this afternoon.
Okay, and Cindy, were you going to try to compress some of those files?